Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Audi Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be doing a preview of the men's elite road race. Don't say the O word because they will come down on you with a whole legal team. So we're going to try and avoid, basically it's some bike race that's in France that's relatively important, but we're not saying the actual name of it. And it's not being included anywhere in any of the titles for that reason. But the important thing is how we're going to do in terms of VELOGAMES, who are the correct people to be picking. There's loads to be getting into here. There's loads of great riders. Really, it's like kind of like the best of the best, especially considering we've got the very small kind of team sizes. We've got a very distilled start list, and therefore there's very little kind of waffle. There's very little pack fill going on here. It's all just hitters. So it's going to be really hard to make a really good team. But let's talk about most expensive riders. Got Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel, Remco Evenepoel there. So the big three favourites for this race. And as a matter of fact, Pedersen is like fourth favourite. So they're in a pretty good order here actually. Van Aert obviously didn't have that great of a Tour de France. I think we were all expecting a little bit more. But then he came third in the Olympic TT. So therefore I think that his form is fine. But there's a lot of good riders in this Belgian squad. Wout van Aert is good over these long kind of race distances, and therefore he is a good pick. It's just that he's 32 credits, and I do think that I think there's just so much uncertainty in this road race. I almost said the O word. There's so much uncertainty in it that he could end up in a group behind, and you end up just sort of wasting 32 credits. So that's just my only gripe with the really too expensive riders, is that in any other normal kind of race, I'd say they are like very much worth it, but part of me is just being a little bit apprehensive about picking them because it's just a lot to invest in such an unpredictable race, if that makes sense. But saying that, Van der Poel, very similarly, didn't have a very good Tour de France, but he's saying that he's had pretty similar prep to what he's done for what he did to Glasgow, and obviously he cleaned that up pretty easily, even with that crash. But again, is the course really good for Van der Poel? I think it's good. It's not perfect though. I think some steeper climbs would be better. After all, on the last circuit, the steepest climb is like 7% or something, and I just think that maybe he'd prefer something a little bit steeper. I think it perhaps favours Van Aert a little bit more, or maybe even Remco, but I think that Van der Poel is a good pick. He is the guy who always turns up for these big events and always smashes it. It happens every time, and therefore he is a good pick. There's no two ways about it. But he does only have two other riders with him, so that's a slight drawback. Whereas Belgium have four people, so that's a slight advantage to the Belgians. Remco, he's a good pick as well. He could definitely solo to victory. That's how I'd see him winning, and I think that is certainly a possibility. It could be a bit like Wollongong 2 years ago at the World Championships, where he just sort of rather unceremoniously soloed to victory. So I do think that Remco is a good pick for this race. Obviously did good at the Tour, looked good in the road, in the TT, obviously, because he won that. So he's obviously recovered and doing quite well after the Tour. He's obviously done well in long race distances before as well. So therefore Remco is a good pick. Especially with, lots of straight roads in this last circuit, there's ample opportunity for Remco just to kind of stealth his way off the front and then just TT to victory. And especially that favours him in the scoring system, because if you get those breakaway points at like 20 and 10k to go, he's going to get an extra 120 points if he sweeps up both of those. And if anybody is to go solo out of anybody on this start list, I'd say that Remco's the guy to do it. So that's why I favour him, because the scoring system certainly favours him a little bit more. Pedersen's a good pick as well. Obviously, he crashed out the Tour, but I would say that based upon how he looked in Glasgow last year, that he is a good pick. He is probably the closest to the kind of super crazy good one-day races of Van der Poel and Van Aert and Pogacar. So therefore Pedersen is good. He's probably the leader for the Danish team as well, so quite favourable towards Pedersen, but I just don't know how he's recovered after that crash. That's the only question mark I have over him. Other than that, Pedersen should really be like a top 5 candidate for this race, so long as he makes it into the right moves and nothing gets up the road, which he isn't a part of. Then you got these 24 credit riders, none of which I'm not thinking of picking any of these. I don't think they've been in any one of my drafts so far. Hershey, of course, won the Czech Tour recently, so he's in good form, but I just don't think he's one of a few riders who I think just don't really... This course isn't brilliant for them. Hershey would be better if it was like steeper inclines, like, 14% or something, because he's lighter. He is more of like a climber. I'd say this is more of like a pure classic style, like, 75 kg plus sort of course. I just think that Hershey would favour some like slightly longer and slightly steeper climbs, but saying that, he should really still be getting a top 10. It's just that, can somebody do as well as Hershey but cost less? Like, they probably could do. Laporte didn't look great during the Tour, neither did Mohoric. Pidcock, very similarly, he left because of COVID, but then won the mountain bike, so he's clearly looking in decent form. But again, just another kind of top 10 candidate, him and Hershey. I just think they prefer a bit of a tougher course, and I think very similarly for Alaphilippe, he has been in a couple of my drafts. I do think that Alaphilippe could do well in this race. He's done very well over long race distances in the past. He has been a 2-time world champion at the end of the day. But again, would Alaphilippe favour some slightly longer and slightly steeper climbs? I think so. But he should really be in the mix nonetheless, because, these French athletes just seem to be getting such a boost at this event that shall not be named. Other 22 credit riders, I would personally be avoiding the teams with 1 or like 2 riders. So like Bini, he's the only rider for Eritrea. He has to go get his own like bidons and stuff. He's got nobody to work on the front if he misses a move. It's just too risky for me. Very similarly, Michael Matthews, although very good on like the big occasions to kind of pull out some good results, he's just, I don't know. I feel like this is a race suited towards the attacker, and Matthews isn't really that. He gets good results by being in the group behind, and it gets brought back. And I just don't think that's how this race is going to pan out. But saying that, he could very well be competing for a top 10 if his group is, in contention for that, even if somebody's gone up the road. So Matthews could be good, but I favour the more attacking style riders. Maybe like Jorgensen could be good. I'd say it'd probably be him and Alaphilippe are my favourites. Van Baal, I don't know, I just haven't seen the form of him either. So I'd go with either Jorgensen, I'd go with Alaphilippe, or I'd maybe go with Matthews, because he'll probably be in that group 2 or group 3 and contest for some top 10 placings for sure. 20 credit riders, again, I've only really been looking at one of these specifically. Maybe you already know who I'm going to talk about. The Spanish riders, Arambarou, Ayuso, not really. I just don't really think it's a Ayuso sort of race. Healy, it could be good for. He is a very strong solo rider. He's kind of like Remco in a way. That he's just very good at getting really aero and just getting his head down. So Healy, I think his aggressive style of racing does suit this race. So I think Healy could be good. Kung he's just been a little bit off the boil. Just haven't seen enough of him really to warrant picking him. Skelmos Jensen, I think he'll be working for Pedersen more than likely, considering that he rides for the same trade team. Stuyven is, in my opinion, the best 20 credit rider based upon, previews that I've seen around, the Cycling Mole one, if you guys have seen that, Lantern Rouge, whatever kind of preview you go and look at. Stuyven looked good during the end of the Tour, and apparently he's, been looking, good post-Tour as well. And I do think that Belgium aren't just going to commit him to the front. Stuyven is somebody who has done well in long races. World Champs last year, he was 6, and in 2022 he was 4th. Like, when he's allowed to do his own ride, he can be a really strong rider. So I think Stuyven at 20 is very good value, and I think you'll be seeing quite a few Stuyvens dotted around the place on people's teams. Tranick and Woods I wouldn't be picking. 18 credit riders, Pollitt and Sheffield, not really keen for either of those. They'll probably pick up a top 20, but I just think that we're looking for more than that. I think you could go with a 16 credit rider like, say, Bettiol, who could do better, but for cheaper. Bettiol left the Tour, but he is the Italian champion. He has done well over long distance races before. World Champs last year, he was 10th. He almost finished on the podium of Flanders this year. He's won Flanders in the past. So And that's the kind of style of racing that this is going to be. So Bettiol, I think, is a good pick to be going with, and should really be the leader for Italy, considering they have Viviani and Mazzato as the two other placings. So I think that Bettiol's good. Lascano, ever the enigma. Never quite know what to expect from Lascano, but I think he's got the best shot of any of the Spanish riders, so why not? McNulty was 5th in the TT, and another rider who very good at probably just pinging it off the front and getting his head down and TTing to victory. So I think that McNulty, kind of similar to Ben Healy, is quite a good choice to be going with. He was up the road with Carapaz last time I almost said it. He was up the road last time there was this race going on, and but obviously he didn't hold on to compete for victory. But he is good over one-day races, is McNulty, and maybe Schoins, but again, kind of like what I said earlier about Binny, he's a solo rider, so it's just not great when you're just needing to do your own thing and you have no teammates to help you out. Bit of a shame for Schoins, otherwise he'd be a very good candidate for a top 10 here. 14 credit riders, obviously we're all looking at Navarez, no question marks there, to be honest, although just announced to go to UAE Team Emirates next year, which is pretty cool. Navarez, like I said, obviously he is a solo rider, but he has had such an insane year that I reckon he could be the one rider who I might make an exception for with that rule. So I think Navarez is good. Piffy could be okay. There's him and Corbin Strong. I just don't know which way round it's going to be. Piffy obviously did good in Roubaix, a very long race, so therefore he's got the qualities of somebody who could go well in this race, but I would probably go with Navarez sooner than Piffy, in all honesty. 12 Fred Ryan Rownshold I'm not really looking at. 12 credit riders, none of these really tickling my fancy. I could maybe go with Shackman if I was forced to go with one of them, but I think that O'Connor and Clark will be working for Matthews. Einhorn's just like a solo rider. Viviani and Mazzato, yeah, they should just be working for Bettiol. So Shackman is the best option out of those. 10 credit riders, Haller, Mezgec or Williams. Again, none of them particularly great. Williams didn't look that great during the tours. Never really done a race of this distance and been like competitive before. So I'd probably go with Luka Mezgec, but that's like, clutching at straws a little bit. 8 credit riders. Fedorov's not bad, to be honest with you. Derek G's pretty good as well. Tarling, Vacek, Vauquelin. There's a couple of good ones in here. I would say if I had to distill it down to just a couple of them, I would be going with Vacek or G, to be honest. Just because G was very good during the tour. Vacek has just been going up a different level. Like he's very good this year. He's taken a step up from last year. Tarling's the kind of rogue one where he could get in an early breakaway and try and really put the cat amongst the pigeons. But personally, I think that they'll more than likely be working for Pidcock, and considering that Tarling is also his trade teammate, I think that Tarling will more than likely be a domestique, but that's not to say that he won't get his own opportunity. He did seem pretty disappointed after the time trial, which is pretty fair, considering that he had a mechanical there. He would have got a medal. The 6 credit riders, the ones which I like are Gibbons, Kirsch and Michaels. I'm not really looking at any of the other ones. Maybe Nelson Oliveira, but that's about it. If you're picking any of the other ones, what are you doing? And then 4 credit riders, honestly, it's just a complete breakaway bingo. Like you're going to be putting somebody on here who you hope is going to get in the breakaway and not just immediately DNF after 50k. Honestly, none of them are particularly better than the other ones. I would probably go with Buglas of Greece, just because I've actually kind of heard of him and he's actually competed in some decent races before, including kind of world champs, so he kind of knows what to expect. And then other than that, literally just going on gut feel as to what nation you think is going to get in the breakaway. This is my team at the moment. I've gone quite, lots of depth and not very much kind of like top end quality. You've only got the one guy in Remco here as like the big out and out favourite. If you wanted, for example, you could go with a strategy where you go with 2 of the big riders like this, where you would have to probably sacrifice Navarez down and put in Kirsch. So you could go with a team like this, which has kind of 2 of the really big favourites in Van Aert and Van der Poel, and then a secondary favourite of Healy, and then you basically just pad the rest of the team out with some low credit riders. You could go with just the one kind of big favourite, which would look something a bit more like this, where you kind of spread it out a little bit more. Or you could go with an even more sort of extreme strategy where you don't go with any of the big favourites, which would look a bit more like this. So you got none of the big three favourites. You do get Pedersen, but then you're really kind of just going for depth. But personally, I think that, you know, the 6s and 4s probably won't score you too much, so it's probably better to really sacrifice those positions just to get the really top riders. So those are kind of some frameworks that you guys can use to create some teams. But let me know what you're thinking in the comment section down below. How do you think the race is going to pan out? And therefore, what kind of team are you thinking of constructing? And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Salut!